calls us, don't let it fade.
Welcome to Liberty Monday with Monday. Today, we continue our in-depth examination of the grievances outlined in the United States Declaration of Independence, focusing on the 23rd and 24th grievances. These are not minor complaints or procedural disputes. Instead, they represent a dramatic escalation in both tone and substance, revealing how the relationship between the American colonies and the British Crown had deteriorated beyond repair. By this point, the colonists are no longer merely listing injustices, they are documenting what they believe to be acts of tyranny and war. Let us begin with the 23rd grievance. The text reads, "He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands." This is one of the most emotionally charged grievances in the entire document, and for good reason. The colonists are accusing King George III of forcing captured American sailors into British military service. These were not volunteers. These were men taken against their will, often seized from ships, and then placed in an impossible situation. Imagine the gravity of that choice. A man captured at sea is told he must now fight for the very power he likely opposed. He is ordered to take up arms not just in general warfare, but specifically against his own countrymen, against people who share his identity, his community, and perhaps even his family ties. The phrase executioners of their friends and brethren is not rhetorical exaggeration, it reflects a genuine fear that these men would be forced into direct conflict with those they knew and cared about. And if they refused? The alternative was equally grim. They could fall themselves by their hands, meaning they could face death rather than comply. In essence, the Crown placed these individuals in a position where every possible outcome violated either their moral conscience or their very survival. This grievance speaks directly to the concept of natural rights, a cornerstone of the colonists' political philosophy. The idea that individuals possess inherent rights, including the freedom of conscience and the right to self-determination, was deeply influenced by Enlightenment thinkers. For the colonists, this act by the British Crown was not simply a wartime necessity, it was a profound violation of those natural rights. Within the broader context of the American Revolutionary War, such practices only deepened resentment. The British Navy's reliance on forced service, including impressment, reinforced the perception that the Crown no longer viewed the colonists as equal subjects under the law. Instead, they were treated as expendable resources, tools to be used in maintaining imperial control. This grievance also underscores a critical transformation in how the colonists viewed their relationship with Britain. A government that compels its people to act against their own interests, their own communities, and their own moral convictions is no longer fulfilling its fundamental purpose. Rather than protecting its citizens, it is actively exploiting and endangering them. That realization carries enormous weight, because it directly challenges the legitimacy of the authority in question. Now, let us turn to the 24th grievance, which builds upon this sense of betrayal and takes it even further. The text reads, "He has abdicated government here, by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us." This is a decisive and unambiguous claim. The colonists are asserting that King George III has effectively abandoned his role as their ruler. The use of the word abdicated is particularly significant. It implies not just failure, but a complete relinquishment of responsibility. In their view, the king has stepped away from the duties of governance, not formally, but functionally, by choosing to act as an aggressor rather than a protector. At the heart of this grievance is a fundamental principle of political theory, the purpose of government. According to the philosophy that influenced the Declaration, government exists to secure the rights of the people. It is meant to provide stability, justice, and protection from harm. In exchange, the people grant their consent to be governed. But what happens when that government turns against its own people? That is the question the colonists are answering here. By declaring us out of his protection, they argue that the king has severed the very bond that justifies his authority. Protection is not a secondary function of government, it is its primary obligation. Without it, the entire structure of governance collapses. The second part of the grievance, waging war against us, drives the point home with unmistakable clarity. This is no longer a dispute over taxation or representation. This is open conflict. By the time this document was written, battles such as Lexington and Concord had already taken place, and the colonies were fully engaged in armed resistance. The king's actions were not perceived as isolated incidents, but as part of a broader campaign to suppress and control the colonies through force. This grievance serves as a turning point in the Declaration's argument. Up until now, many of the grievances could be interpreted as severe abuses of power within an existing political framework. But here, the colonists are making the case that the framework itself has been destroyed. The king is no longer governing, he is fighting. He is no longer a ruler, they see him as an enemy. This distinction is crucial, because it provides the moral and legal justification for independence. If the king has abdicated his responsibilities and initiated war against the colonies, then the colonies are no longer bound by allegiance to him. They are, in effect, a separate people with the right to defend themselves and establish their own system of government. When we consider these two grievances together, a clear narrative emerges. The first shows a government that has lost its moral compass, willing to force individuals into acts that betray their conscience and community. The second shows a government that has crossed an even more definitive line, transforming from a flawed authority into an active adversary. This progression is not accidental. It reflects the colonists' deliberate effort to demonstrate that every avenue for reconciliation had been exhausted. They are building a case, step by step, that independence is not only justified but necessary. These grievances are not merely complaints, they are evidence in a broader argument about the nature of legitimate government. Their importance extends far beyond the historical moment in which they were written. They articulate enduring principles about power, responsibility, and the rights of individuals. They remind us that a government's authority is not absolute, it is conditional. It depends on its ability to uphold the rights and well-being of its people. When a government forces its citizens into moral compromise, it undermines trust. When it wages war against them, it destroys the very foundation of its legitimacy. These are not abstract ideas, they are lessons drawn from lived experience, written into one of the most influential documents in history. As we reflect on these grievances today, we are reminded that liberty is not self-sustaining. It requires vigilance, accountability, and a clear understanding of the principles that support it. The colonists believed that when those principles were violated, action was not just permitted, it was required. Thank you for watching. As always, stay informed, stay free.